Hello and welcome to the 80th episode of Fur, Fins, and Feathers. Today, our guest is Dr. Bruce Indek of
Weymouth, Massachusetts. Yep.
A noted chiropractor who has a lot of great information to share with us. Dr. Indek, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm very honored to see you and to meet you finally.
Thank you.
How did you get into this business?
Yep. All right. So when I was in high school, way back when, I wanted to be a veterinarian. And back then, most of the veterinarians were white males. And my guidance counselor at the time told me, think about something else because you're going to be at the bottom of the list just because you're the wrong sex and you're not a minority. So I said, okay. So I joined and went to Syracuse University, became a biology major. And then after that, went to chiropractic school. And after being a chiropractor for many years, my son was born, and we wanted to get a dog, but we wanted to wait till he was older. So a good friend of ours was the president of the Massachusetts Quarter Horse Association, and Nancy had said to us at one time, you know, if you don't want to get a dog yet, but you want to interact with animals, have him interact with animals, I'll put him on a horse. He's like 3 years old at the time. I'll just lead him around. So we did that, and he ended up liking to ride, and then he started doing some horse competition, and then as he got like 7 or 8 years old, and she said to me one day, you know, if you ever get certified in animal chiropractic, I'd have you adjust our horses. And I said, really? So I looked into it. You have to be a certified veterinarian, licensed chiropractor, and then it's a 250-hour postgraduate course. You take an animal chiropractic, and then you go out to Oklahoma and take the board exam to get licensed. And so I did that, and Nancy had me adjusting her horses, and things just took off from there. And now it's pretty much 90% of what I do is animal chiropractic. I have a human office, but I'm only there by appointment.
And you work with horses,
yep,
and dogs, and a few cats.
And few cats. Yep.
Cats.
Yeah. All my calls for dogs are 90% is house calls. There are a few facilities I go to where I see dogs, like Performance Plus in Raynham, and then there's a place up in New Hampshire, and then there's another place in Connecticut. But 90% of it is house calls, and then obviously horses is barn calls, and that's how we do it.
We were very interested, people from our kennel clubs, several different kennel clubs, were very interested in your services for different breeds.
Right. Yeah, most of the, there's no breed specific, but all the breeds obviously have tendencies towards certain things, such as dachshunds tend to have a lot of disc problems, corgis tend to have a lot of disc problems, just because of the long spine and the short legs, as we call it, the long suspension bridge and the short support system. So, and then obviously you have dogs that are doing performance. So I have a lot of agility dogs. Like I just came back from the American Kennel Club National Agility Championships that I go to every year, and I adjust dogs there. And so those dogs typically will have a lot of issues with the thoracic spine or their neck or their legs, doing the weave pulls or going over jumps. And then a lot of the people that have performance dogs also have their dogs adjusted as a maintenance basis, just because they're athletes. So you have to keep them tuned up as well as you can because you're spending a lot of money and time to go to different events, and they want the dog to be at optimal performance versus waiting till the dog has a problem and then trying to treat it. And then they're losing time and training to enter different events. So.
Dock diving is very popular.
Dock diving is huge. Dock diving has been growing in leaps and bounds, and there are a lot of places in New England now that even have indoor dock diving. So in New England, they can actually do dock diving competition indoors during the winter, which is great. And then obviously there's places in the summertime that are outside. And then a lot of dogs too. I have a lot of conformation dogs, and obviously the breeders and handlers are real concerned about top line, sitting square, gait, and so they found that through chiropractic, their top line is a lot better, their gait is a lot smooth, they're sitting square. So oftentimes there's a few shows that I go to that I know some of the handlers, and oftentimes the handlers are telling the owners to bring the dog over to see me before the dog goes in the ring because they want the dog as perfect as possible.
Of course.
And that's grown a lot. When I first started doing that 8 years ago, there were very few people in conformation that were using chiropractic. They were more interested in the combs and the hairspray and everything else and the colors, but they didn't really pay any attention to biomechanics
That,
or movement.
for the most part, I believe,
Yeah.
has dwindled.
Oh yeah, that's dwindled some. So yeah, they're very interested in biomechanics because they can see their dog performs better and they want to win and they want to come in the top 20. So the only way you're going to do that is if you have everything going for you. So, and it's chiropractic. I always say to people, it's not like taking steroids if you're an athlete and we're changing your body in a dog. It's more of enhancing what the dog already has. Like an athlete would stretch or exercise or work out to get in shape. Same thing with chiropractic with dogs, making them function optimally for what they have, because you're not putting anything into their body that wasn't there before, and you're not taking anything out. So you're not altering the dog in any way, shape, or form.
Very good.
Yep.
What have you got for us today?
So this is what we call a bail. I use it to adjust dogs, and I also have two of them that I stand on when I adjust horses. So that way the top of my pelvis is in line with the top of the horse, so I can adjust the horse from above. And it's very stable. And it's literally just a foam box, so it's very light, but it's made out of expanded polystyrene, so it's very strong. So I can stand on it. It doesn't crush or anything like that. Usually when I show up at a barn or a house with this, they always wonder, like, it must be really heavy. And then I pick it up with 2 fingers, and they go, wow, you must be strong. I'm like, no, it's just foam.
Very good. Today we have Debbie Lawton from Swansea, who is a Border Terrier fancier. Welcome, Deb. Bring
Thank you.
your lovely Border Terrier over.
She's our demo dog today, I guess. Huh?
Your demo
True.
dog.
Here we go. Here we go.
And her name is
Her name is Keera.
Keera.
Come on over, Keira.
Keira.
So what we're going to do is I'm going to basically do a little demonstration of how I evaluate a dog. And then if we find anything, we'll do some adjustments. I'm also going to use something called cold laser. And cold laser decreases inflammation, decreases muscle tension, helps restore normal body function. A lot of veterinarians all use cold laser nowadays for wound healing. It basically, after surgery, you use cold laser and you can increase the healing time, or decrease the healing time, I should say, by 50%, which is pretty amazing. And I've been using the cold laser probably for about 8-9 years. And the first time I used it, I couldn't believe the difference in range of motion and mobility immediately after using it. And it blew me away. So I've been using it ever since. So we're going to use that as well. So first, we're going to check your neck, buddy. So I'm basically just going down the spine and checking for any muscle tension or lack of general mobility. Come over here a little bit. Hi, how are you? And we're going to check the shoulders. So especially in agility dogs that I see, shoulder movement is real important because it's basically how they're getting over a jump or extending when they're running. And dock divers as well. Then we're going to go down the spine and we're going to check their upper back. So literally it feels, what I'm feeling for is every dog's spine, just like people, there's like a little bit of a rubbery end feel when it's normal. And when it's not normal, it almost feels like you're pressing into a hard piece of metal or wood. So I'm just checking for just general give of their spine, which kind of directs me to if there's something happening there or not. And there's definitely more tension and tightness in upper thoracic spine, right through where my finger is right here. Definitely tighter. And then we're going to check the pelvis and see how that's moving. And then we're going to check the leg extension back here, which also is part of the psoas muscle, which helps with hip flexion. That's pretty good. And we're going to check her knees. I have a lot of dogs I see with luxating patella, so we can oftentimes help a dog that has a low-grade luxating patella, so we can help manage that, and they don't necessarily need surgery. A lot of times on little dogs, they do surgery on luxating patellas, and because the ridge that the patella rides in is so small, sometimes the surgery doesn't always work. And so if we can help them function a little better with the luxating patella and manage it, it can be a lot easier. So there's definitely some tension and tightness in her upper back here. So we're going to use the cold laser on it first. And what you're going to see, I'm going to put these little glasses on while I use it. The laser will not affect your eyes unless I point it right in your face. I'm going to have her smell my glasses. But I wear the glasses because I look at it every day and use it every day, so it protects my eyes. The type of laser most veterinarians use is called Class 4 cold laser. This is Class 3. And Class 4 cold laser, if you're ever at a veterinarian and they're using it, they have your dog wear goggles, and everybody in the room wears goggles, because any amount of Class 4 laser can actually damage your eye. So people that are familiar with it, they're going, how come everybody in the room isn't wearing glasses? And it's because this is Class 3, so it's one step down. And we usually hold this on their back for about 3 minutes. Yeah, you can keep smelling it, yeah. So there's no temperature with this. They call it cold laser because it produces no heat. Okay. Everyone equated laser beams and laser light with heat, cutting, and it being hot. And when this came out 20 some odd years ago, the engineers who devised cold laser wanted everyone to understand there was no heat being produced. There's no temperature. So because there was lack of temperature, they called it cold laser. So then everybody assumed it must be cold. But it's not. Yeah. And the feeling that most of the dogs get with this is usually a sense of relaxation. They usually feel just an overall sense of relaxation in the area that we're using it. And it's absorbed through the skin superficially. So how it works is you don't have to penetrate deep into their body to have an effect on the deeper muscles. So every cell in the body, if you remember from school days, has something in it called a mitochondria. And the mitochondria's job in a cell is to produce fuel or energy for the cells to function. And what will happen is when the superficial tissue that we're shining this on is stimulated by the laser, the mitochondria in turn, it's like giving them a shot of espresso, wakes them up and makes them function at a higher level, so it makes the tissue function better. But what ends up happening is every cell in the body has interaction with deeper cells. So it's like a waterfall effect. So you can stimulate superficial tissue like we're doing right now and their cells and have a deeper effect like a waterfall. So you don't have to go deep into their body to have a deep effect. Oftentimes people see me doing this and they think, well, how can that do much? It's just shining it on their skin. But it's very much like sunlight. You have too much sunlight and you can get skin cancer deeper in your body, even though the sunlight's just reflecting off your skin because it's affecting the deeper cells. What do you think, huh? I think she thinks she's getting bacon after we're done.
She's enjoying it.
Yeah, chiropractic with dogs and horses and cats, they usually all enjoy it because it feels good to them. They know you're doing something to help them. So it's never a process where you have to muzzle the dog or hold them down or anything like that. And the other thing that's important to know is that some people think you have to medicate the animal so that they're relaxed so you can do what you need to do. And in reality, that's bad because if you medicated them, then you're producing a false sense of what their body actually does or how it functions. So you're relaxing muscles artificially with the medication, and so therefore if I'm going to feel muscle tension or movement, what I'm feeling is not reality because you've altered it with chemicals. So the worst thing you could do would be actually to give them a muscle relaxer and then try to do chiropractic with them because you really don't know how they're functioning when they're in that altered state.
And she is so well behaved.
She is. Because she knows she's getting highly paid after this.
With bacon.
All right, so we're going to stop that. Yeah, you can see what it is. It's just a fan. So oftentimes there's a fan that goes after we shut it off that cools it down. So dogs usually go, what is that? Let's put this here. So the adjustment, when we do it next, it literally looks like we're doing massage. In dogs, unlike people and horses, their spine being horizontal, there's less pressure in all the joints. Unlike people, we're vertical, there's a lot of pressure in all the joints because they're stacked on top of each other. With a dog, since it's a cross, there's not a lot of pressure in each joint, so you don't have to do fast, quick movements, or there's no cracking sounds or anything like that. So oftentimes it literally just looks like we're doing massage when we're adjusting them. And I find the vertebrae that's not moving correctly, and then knowing the direction that vertebrae moves in and the plane that the joint is in, I put some pressure into that joint in that specific direction for a specific amount of time, and I can feel the joint release, so that way I know it's unlocked itself. And therefore, when you unlock the vertebrae, you're taking pressure off the nerves, and then you're allowing the muscles to function well. And the other amazing thing is the nervous system controls everything in the body. So if you affect the nervous system in the spine, you can literally have impact on organ function as well. So I've had a lot of dogs that have had all kinds of organ dysfunction that their veterinarian is treating them for, which is good. But as I'm working on them, all of a sudden the dog's getting better response from what the veterinarian's doing, because we're helping their nervous system and their organ system function better at the same time. And many of the performance dogs, and some of the even household dogs, I'll often give the owners exercise recommendations after we're done. Because if they're doing specific exercises with them or stretches with them, then that's going to only support what we're doing. Just like if you had gone to a chiropractor yourself or a massage person, they're usually going to tell you to do certain things when you go home, as opposed to nothing. So,
How do these treatments increase longevity?
well, that's hard to say. I can tell you that I've had a lot of dogs that oftentimes people have called me, the dog's on their last, right.
Yeah.
And they call me up and go, can you do anything? Because otherwise we're going to put him down next week. So many times we've been able to help a dog function better to the point where they've lived another year or two. So I've had a lot of people tell me that, if it wasn't for what you were doing, we would have put him down a year or two ago. But he was able to walk better, he was able to move better, he was able to eat, and he was happier. And so they just went with it. I have had a lot of dogs that have had disc problems, and some of them ended up with wheelchairs, the wheels. But especially in a case like that, we're working on the front end of the dog. Dogs carry 60% of their body weight on their front legs naturally. So what ends up happening is you have a back end problem, and you start to put more force or weight onto the front end. And then the front end becomes a problem because you're excessively using it. And if you already have a back end problem and then you create a front end problem, now it's the end of the road.
Yeah.
So we're trying to maintain the front end in a lot of those dogs as well. And chiropractic also with animals is different than people in the fact that with people, you might see a person in your office if they're acutely in pain 2 or 3 times a week. With dogs, acute care might be once a week or once every 2 weeks. Because dogs and horses and most animals, their nervous system is a lot more attuned than a human's nervous system. And they're a lot more sensitive. So if you did chiropractic 2-3 times a week on an animal, you'd probably mess them up just for the fact that it's too much input into their nervous system too often from the outside. So if someone calls me and their dog has trouble walking and they have disc problems or they've had a pinched nerve or they've got vertebrae that aren't moving well, then I might see that dog once a week for a couple weeks, and then we go slowly out depending on how they're doing. A lot of dogs will see them maybe on a once-a-month basis just to maintain them, to keep them in good health, versus waiting until they have a problem again. Because it's like anything, you want to be more proactive than reactive. There we go. So while we've been talking here, I've been adjusting our friend, and she's definitely getting a little bit looser. Typically, time-wise, when I do a house call, it's usually about 15 minutes. And I always ask the owner about diet and food intake because that affects the dog too. I can't tell you how many times I've had someone call me and they tell me their dog is lame, and it ends up being the dog has hypothyroid, their thyroid's low, and the dog has gained weight, and that increased weight has put more force onto the front of their body, and now they've strained their front end. But the cause of the problem isn't a strained front end. The cause of the problem was a thyroid condition. So it's oftentimes important to know what the dog's eating as well.
You travel all over New England.
Yep, I do southern New Hampshire. I'm all through Massachusetts, all of Cape Cod. I am in Rhode Island. I am in northern Connecticut. So 45,000 miles a year in my car. It's a lot of driving. My wife always says, ask him the name of a street if you're looking for it, because he might know where it is. So,
You had no problem today.
no, I had no problem getting here today. And thank goodness for GPS in 2022. There we go. You stand up for me? Almost done, buddy. Let's check your psoas muscle. See how the pressure is here. That's pretty good.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Dogs in conformation often spend a lot of time in a crate,
Yeah.
either
yeah.
at a show or traveling.
Yeah,
Can
agility
that
dogs too.
Can that affect? Cause she
Oh, yeah.
Came back from a 6-hour car ride.
Oh yeah, just like this past weekend, I was in Florida at the National Agility Championships, and there were dogs there that were driving from New England, and there were dogs there that were driving from Idaho all the way to Florida. So days and days in the crate. Obviously, people get out and they walk them, but many times, a lot of the show dogs, the crate can definitely tie them up, and it depends on how comfortable that crate was too, and how often the owner stopped while they were driving to get the dog out and move them around. The worst thing that could ever happen is when people show dogs or they're competing with dogs, they take them out of the crate, they compete with them, and throw them back in the crate, because they need to warm up and stretch out, then they compete, and just like an athlete, they need to cool down and stretch again before they go right back in a crate. Because if you're asking them to do something that's athletic, and then all of a sudden they stop, and then you put them in a crate, just like a human who's an athlete, they're going to tighten up, the muscles are going to shorten up, and they'll get stiff. And then when they get out of the crate, they'll look worse than they were when they went in the crate. There we go. And that's as simple as it is. And you're done. What do you think?
Girl.
And you did great.
Good girl. You come see me?
You gonna go see her?
No,
You're gonna stay now, right?
This is nice. I'm gonna.
I'll just stay right here.
I think she just wants to stay for
There
the
you go.
afternoon.
She enjoyed that. That is good.
Yeah, almost all of them enjoy it. They love it, and obviously it feels good to them. So they're
Thank
not
you for the
running off.
demonstration.
Oh, you're welcome.
That's wonderful.
So yeah, so they're not going to run off, or they're not in pain or anything like that. And obviously, dogs that are in pain that we see, we're going to adjust them differently than a dog that is not in pain, because they're going to be less sensitive. And then even dogs that are older, dogs that might be 14 or 15, we're going to adjust them different than a dog who's 2 or 3 years old. And then puppies too. Oftentimes I'll see puppies that are only weeks old, and we're adjusting them maybe with my pinky or the tip of a finger, because everything is so flexible. But they can have a problem, because if you think about it, the process of being in the womb and being all bunched up with your sisters and brothers is tough, and then being pushed out of the dog, that's a very traumatic experience. So I often explain it to people. It's like a twig. If a twig is bent, it grows into a crooked tree. So same thing with a young dog and a puppy. If that dog has a problem, they're going to end up having problems when they get older. And unfortunately, I teach at the Animal Chiropractic College in Kansas a couple times a year, and our class are half veterinarians and half chiropractors. And when I first started doing it, I was amazed to find out that in veterinary school, they don't learn a lot about the biomechanics and function of the spine. They learn about spinal diseases and trauma, but they don't actually learn about function of the spine and how it moves and all the parameters around it. So when we're teaching them, they're just amazed at how much they never knew, because they just always assumed if the dog had back problem, it was a disc or some kind of cancer. And if it wasn't, they just gave them pain medication and muscle relaxers and see if they felt better. But that had nothing to do with the function of that animal and how they were moving. So.
Fascinating. You work a lot with horses.
Yep. I have a lot of horses. I see dressage, hunter jumpers, and then people that just use their horses for trail riding through A lot of dressage horses, for the fact being, biomechanics and movement in a dressage horse is huge because you're asking a horse to do abnormal things. A horse would naturally, in the wild, sidestep across a ring. That wouldn't be normal. So, or extended gaits. That's not normal for a horse to do. Or their head tilted down in that position that they use in dressage. Not a normal activity for a horse. So they're going to have issues. And then jumping horses, for obvious reasons. You're having 1,400 pounds go up in the air and come down with somebody on top of them. There's going to be some problems that are going to occur. So I'll oftentimes even look at the saddles on horses, because the saddle can affect the horse's function. And then the rider, sometimes that's why being a human chiropractor is very good in this case, because if the rider's out of balance and the rider has problems with their back or their pelvis or their hips, then they're putting abnormal pressure on that horse. And oftentimes the rider can create problems in the horse because the rider's out of balance. And I had one horse once that the woman had me look at, and then she told me her other horse was doing the same thing as this horse. And I said to her, do they have different saddles? And they said, oh yeah, they're different saddles. And I said, are you the one riding both horses? She said, yeah. So then I took a look at her hips and her spine, and she had the exact same pressure areas and problems that the horse had. And so guess who the problem was? It was the rider.
The owner.
Yeah. And I told her, I said, well, the problem is it's you. It isn't the horse and it isn't your saddle. But interestingly, if the rider is out of balance for a long enough period of time, they will alter the saddle. Just like shoes. You wear shoes out more one side than the other if your feet are out of balance. So they'll wear that saddle. So the saddle might have been good to start with, but because the rider is so out of balance, they abnormally wear the padding on the saddle different from one side to the other, which causes abnormal wear on the horse because there's different pressure from side to side. So now the horse has a problem because the saddle has a problem because the rider created the saddle problem. So it becomes very convoluted, but thank goodness dogs don't have saddles. So
What about cats?
I've had a few cats over the years, and I've had everything from cats that I had one cat that had something called saddle thrombosis. And saddle thrombosis was a blockage of one of the main arteries that went to the leg. And they got the cat on blood thinners and right away. And I started adjusting the cat, and the cat's name was Jack. And I started adjusting this cat, and the owner was really smart. Her son races bicycles. And so she took one of his racing tires and cut a little piece off and vet wrapped it to the back of the cat's paw, because the cat's paw was constantly like this, dragging on the sidewalk, and they didn't want to cause abrasions and infections. So she took this little piece of tire and vet wrapped it there, so the cat walked around with this little piece of tire. And I started adjusting Jack, and by the third time I went to her house, and she said, wait till you see Jack. And I said, okay. And the cat comes walking out. There was like no more of this. It was normal with just a little limp. And I kept saying to her, that's not the same cat. She said, no, it's Jack. And so because we were adjusting the spine and impacting the nervous system and helping blood flow as well, along with the medication she was getting from the veterinarian, the cat miraculously came back and lived another 5 years.
Wonderful.
Wasn't dragging anymore. I've had cats with broken jaws from car accidents, and we've worked on their neck, and one of them is up in Salem that I see, and she's been doing great. And first time I saw this cat was 7 years ago, and she eats and everything, and you'd never know she had her jaw broken.
I am unfortunately being told that we are drawing to a conclusion.
Okay.
You have been fabulous.
Thank you.
Would you come back again?
Sure.
We'd love to have you. Well, this is our 80th show at Fur, Fins, and Feathers. Dr. Indek, was a pleasure to meet you again.
Thank
and
you.
we would love to have you back.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.